right?
No.
Front's always more fun.
Choo choo, Megan's a friend.
You do know it's going to be recording this, so.
I know.
Another.
Hello, everybody, tonight. And tonight, we're basically going to be thinking over overthinking. Now, before we get started into this, I am well aware that for us, most of us in this group, it's kind of like pot calling the kettle black kind of thing. Like we're severe overthinkers over here. However, you know, being severe overthinkers, we're highly experienced, very experienced overthinkers. And so, therefore, like, we're going to kind of talk over a few tips to deal with overthinking. But before we do that, I want to kind of talk about where overthinking comes from, right? And it can be something related to a neurological disorder or something else. But what it really is at its base is an issue of perspectives. It's an issue of seeing too many perspectives and having the inability to decide on one perspective or one way to look at a situation. So, for example, you could take two people. Let's say you take two kids. One of these kids has more of a sour temperament normally. One of these kids is more happy-go-lucky, right? And you put those two kids in the same room. Let's say we put them in a room and it's full of like garbage and stuff everywhere. It stinks, it's nasty. You give them 20 minutes and you go back in that room and you ask the kid who always has the sour disposition, like, you know, how are you feeling? Probably say they're not feeling very, very great, right? You ask them, why are you not feeling so great? They're going to be like, well, I'm in this room full of junk, trash, garbage, it stinks. But you go walk up to the kid who's naturally a little more happy and you ask them, you know, what are you so happy? How do you feel? What are you so happy about? And they're probably going to say like, well, with all this trash and junk in here, there's bound to be some cool toys somewhere. There's bound to be something to play with, right? And that is the matter of perspective. You're taking the same situation, but it's looked at differently by two different people. So let's take a thing of correction. I take correction harshly. I really try not to. And I talk about that live on here. I like getting correction. I like getting negative feedback because it allows me to improve. At the same time, I have a tendency to take it harshly at first. And it takes me a minute to kind of wrap my head around it. But if you take a person like me, I eventually get over it because I'm an experienced overthinker. But if you go to a maybe less experienced overthinker, right, and you give them a criticism, they're likely to look at it as, oh, I'm terrible at this, I suck at this, I shouldn't do this anymore. But if you take that same criticism and give it to somebody who has a generally more higher self-esteem outlook on things, they're going to look at that and go, oh, thanks for the chance to get better. And that's two different looks at the exact same perspective. And I've had to dive into this deeply when it came to starting this business and getting everything going and getting everything running for this studio, you know, and that's where I've got a little bit of experience in tempering my overthinking a little bit, because I do understand that it is an issue of perspective. So before I get into the tips, before I get into the actual tips about handling overthinking, do you guys have anything you want to add to that? About what overthinking can be, what it can mean? Silence. Bueller?
I think everyone's overthinking the overthinking.
They're overthinking the overthinking.
Is that not just a natural human trait to overthink a problem?
Well, see,
No.
I thought so.
No.
I always thought it was a
No.
natural human
Yeah.
thing to
No.
overthink a problem, but it's actually not.
No.
Most people are raised being told certain things. They have certain beliefs, and they become very linear in how they look at life and their perspective on life. And so sometimes for some people it's more negative, for some people it's more positive.
Thank you,
But
Mr. Mueller.
But it turns out, as I've learned from talking to therapists and stuff over the years, it turns out most people still have a general box, right? And in that box of their beliefs, their things that they were raised to be true, they approach every situation from that outlook. And so when they approach an issue situation, they've already decided how they're going to look at it. They've already decided the perspective, right? Whether they've decided it's going to be a negative perspective or positive perspective, like the two kids in the example, right? Overthinking usually comes along with neurological disorders and things along those lines. And it's the ability to take in all the perspectives but not be able to choose one. Not be able to choose which way you want to look at it. And instead be able to go, well, I can look at it in the happy way, I can look at it in the sad way, I can look at it in the angry way, but I can't choose which one is right. I don't know which one is right. So it's at the center of overthinking, in my opinion, is an identity crisis. I don't know who I am. I don't know what box I want to, what perspective I want to approach. Maybe I kind of know what I want to do, but then I can't decide to do it. I have a difficult time deciding it because I start questioning whether it's right or not. Oh, thank you, Miss Hughes. She adores you guys.
Oh, thank you. Miss Harper is the cutest thing in the world.
Oh, yeah. Oh, was that the
Yes.
review I couldn't find the other day?
Yes.
Awesome. I appreciate you leaving that review too. Wish we lived closer. Yeah. We miss having you guys around too. So, that's kind of my thinking on it. And I don't mean to like negative what you were saying there, Nana. But
No,
I
it's
thought
a legitimate
everybody did
question.
this. Yeah, I
same.
thought it was an everybody thing until I've spoken to some
Me?
therapists and people like that, and less so. What? Go ahead.
Me?
What about you?
Yes.
What are you talking about?
I annoy you constantly with my lack of overthinking.
That's true. You really do.
So you're gonna see it. So someone who's more neurodivergent and who is going to have a tendency to overthink versus someone who is slightly more neurotypical, and I say slightly because I'm probably more neurodivergent being around neurodivergent people.
We're rubbing off on you.
Yes, but a more neurotypical mindset might tend to be slightly more positive, where you get introduced with a negative situation, and so you think, well, and I'm not sure what to do right now, but I'm going to figure it out,
You chased Megan away.
and I wasn't sitting right next to her.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
So a more, just to recap that, since none of y'all were listening to me, I like to be the center of attention. So, whereas I might approach a situation with, well, I'm not sure what to do, but I know we're going to figure it out and it's going to be okay.
I can't stand that
He
mindset.
can't stand that because
No.
he is sitting here thinking.
I'm like, no,
and
I have to have the
overthinking
solution now.
Right now.
Other,
yeah.
If I don't have the solution, the problem is not solved. I can't have faith the problem be solved until I find the solution.
Until he overthinks it to death.
Until I see
Yes.
it from all the perspectives and then have a difficult time choosing perspective, and then I go talk to y'all and go, all right, which one of these sounds right?
I think they all sound fantastic because they're all going to solve the problem.
Yeah. Hi, Miss Marlana. And yeah, I don't know how not to overthink either. But that's why we're here. I do have some tips to deal with overthinking, or to try to help me deal with overthinking. At the same time, I'm not always good about using these tips. I'm not always good about following this advice. But I thought we would have a discussion about it nonetheless from the different perspectives. You guys ready for the first one?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I made some notes on my phone earlier today of advice I've gotten over the years in dealing with overthinking, and I narrowed it down to a few of my favorites, a few that I think are actually helpful if you can get your head wrapped around it in the moment of overthinking. The first one is, the problem is rarely the problem. 99% of the harm we cause ourselves when we overthink things is mental harm, emotional harm, caused by just the thought itself and not anything actually in reality. 1% of the harm could be caused by reality, but what actually happens in the outcomes. But the majority of the emotional damage we deal with in overthinking is all the worst case scenarios that don't actually come to be. Most of the time, the problem isn't the problem. The way you think about the problem is, which goes back to my example of perspective I talked about earlier. And you guys want to say anything about that?
So it's self-inflicted harm.
Self-inflicted harm.
That I agree with.
So think about it this way. If you were to come across someone who was causing themselves, they were self-inflicting physical harm to themselves, you would stop them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we
There
come
are
across
things-
people doing it to themselves emotionally all the time, and we completely ignore it. Or we go, you're being ridiculous. But to that person, they're not being ridiculous. They're trying to solve a problem to the best of their ability. And they just can't choose what way to attack the problem. They can't choose what perspective.
And you see this most readily in young children. Ages, especially, like 2 to 4 is
I appreciate the calling me young. I do.
2 to 4 is generally communication issues. They
Yes.
cannot verbalize what's going on. But then 4 to 7, they're really starting to figure out who they are, and
When they get a little
voicing
more of an
independent
identity.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're forming their identity, and then they have all of these emotions that they now can communicate, but have no idea what they are. It's completely opposite.
No, that's great. And that goes into what I was talking about. And I think that the issue we have, people that overthink, I'm calling myself out too, y'all, not just y'all over there going, that's me. I think the issue a lot of us overthinkers have is the ability to step outside of our identity easily, to be identity fluid, to be able to adjust what being me means to me from one problem to the next, from one issue to the next. Whereas most people stick with this is the me that I got in touch with between 7 and 15 years old, and I'll look at everything from that perspective. And I've never had that ability. I've never, ever had that ability.
No, because we're chameleons.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just fluid, right? Just moving through.
But you know, the coping skills we give our kids between birth and 5 years old is super important.
Yeah.
To them being able to, even if they are neurodivergent,
I
say
had
they have
none.
ADHD, say they're on the spectrum, it doesn't matter. You're not wrong. But I want to address that. But I love you anyway. Because it helps give them different ways to deal with varying situations. It allows them to be identity fluid. So a toy breaks, we give them coping skills to deal with that, versus if they lose something vastly more important or they make a much bigger mistake, we give them ways to cope with that don't just say, hide your emotions, stow them away, stop crying, this is ridiculous, you know.
So let's come back to the first tip. The problem is rarely
I teach
the
the kids,
problem.
they're my favorite.
The problem is rarely the problem. So I think, I'm just going to say it right now, I think one of the ways that is most helpful to me, if someone was trying to help me with my overthinking, this is one of the best things they can remind me of is just ask me a simple question. All that negative emotion you're feeling, is it because of something that's actually happened, or is it because of several possibilities you've come up in your head that could happen, that haven't actually happened, and likely won't? Are you terrified because of this 0.5% chance that everything's going to go, or is this a legitimate concern of something physical, real, and in reality? But sometimes when I'm stuck in that rut, I'll still feel like, well, no, I don't care if it's 0.5% chance. It could really happen. That could really be a problem. It's all very real. So sometimes it helps me, sometimes it doesn't. Anyone else want to say anything about that before I go on the next one? No. Okay. The next one is another big one for me. The next one I wrote down. This is something I try to remember all the time, because those of us that overthink tend to underact. And what I mean by that is we tend to self-reject. Meaning that we never give other people the opportunity to reject us. We just assume they're going to do it, so we reject ourselves before we ever give them the chance.
I'm going to break up with you before you break up with me, before you think about breaking up with me.
Before we ever actually got together.
Yes.
Yeah, before, like, on our first date, right? Right, so think about this. You start feeling like you don't deserve an opportunity, or you're afraid of what someone might ask you at a job interview, or what someone might say, so you never apply for the job. That's self-rejection. You've rejected yourself for that job. You didn't allow the person who's doing the hiring to reject you. You just rejected yourself for it. You wrote something. You wrote a story. You wrote an article. You don't think it's very good, so you throw it away. You put it in a notebook, and you stash it in a closet somewhere. I used to do this a lot. Those stories eventually became Teammate Children's stories when I went, okay, I'm overthinking this, because I never gave a publisher or anyone else the opportunity to reject me, because I just immediately went, it'll never be good enough, and I rejected myself. We do the same thing when we talk about writing emails, right? Asking for a promotion, any of that stuff, and we'll start overthinking what could go wrong, what could they say wrong, maybe they'll get mad, maybe they'll want to write me up, maybe they'll want to fire me, etc. So we don't do it, but in all reality what we're doing there is self-rejection. We're rejecting ourselves and not allowing ourselves to have the opportunity because we're worried about what someone else might do, even though what they might do is completely and 100% out of our control. So instead we're using our control to hold ourselves down in the hole, instead of putting ourselves out there into someone else's control and allowing them the opportunity to maybe reach a hand out to us and lift us up.
But the hole is comfortable and warm. Even though it's not, because you don't have a job, or you are afraid to reach out to a doctor for help, or you are, a lot of people with anxiety, we hate setting appointments. We can't even stand to call set an appointment, right? So overthink it, and they're like, well, they're not going to have an appointment time available, and then I'm going to say something stupid. I'm not going to be able to hear what they're saying, and then I'm going to come across like I don't know what I'm talking about. And so, you know what, I'm just not going to call. Gets mad when I just call and go, hey, they have 2 appointments ready.
Yeah.
Like, which one do you
Can
want?
you be there at 1? Yeah. I know it's an easy process, but overthinkers tend to underact. This is one I try to keep in mind a lot, the self-rejection. Anyone got any comments on that, avoiding self-rejection?
I think people do it when they want to go start getting in shape.
Yeah.
Or they want to take classes here. And we've heard it time and time again.
But I got to get in better shape before I start working out. That's self-rejection. You are overthinking this. You are so overthinking this. And if you step back just a little bit from that thought, you go, well, what do I need to do to get in better shape so that I can go work out and get fit? Well, I need to work out. So might as well just show up. There's no point in going, well, I need to get myself in better shape before I go do this thing that's going to get me in better shape.
That's like
no, just show up to the thing. It'll work out. It'll be fine.
That's like saying your kindergartner needs a PhD to go to kindergarten.
Yeah. I need to get my
go to school.
I need to get my kindergartner ready for kindergarten by having them do 3rd grade math. You know? All right. That works for you. But yeah, no, that's essentially the core of self-rejection right there. Nana, you look like you got something you want to say about that.
No, I just think that's I had never thought of overthinking as being
A form of self-rejection?
A form of self-rejection, but I can
Absolutely.
see how, just in my own life, in my
Watching
own
us
thoughts,
do it to ourselves? I'm just
watching
kidding.
Me.
Watching you.
Watching me being inside my head and thinking how I've done that.
Yeah, how many times maybe you didn't go for that job opportunity? You didn't even put your name in the ring. You didn't submit some writing or whatever because, well, of course they're not going to like it. I'm no professional at this.
Or just that you can't let thoughts go.
Mm-hmm.
Situations, things.
Right. Now, when I first learned this lesson, let me tell you all a little secret about getting a job. Getting a job is a lot easier than it appears, even when the job market seems to be down. And I learned this when I was unemployed. Because I got to a point that I started applying for jobs regardless of the qualifications. I had an associate's degree from college. That was it. And I was applying to jobs that required bachelor's and master's. Do you know how many of those jobs actually got offered? Most of them. You know why? Because I put something on my resume that nobody else had, and it made them interested to talk to me. I put on my resume, I can't remember the exact terms I used. It was a little cleaner than this. But I basically put on my resume that I was highly experienced at improvisational knowledge.
Also known as BS.
Yes, also known as BS. And everyone that I sent that resume to, I got offered a job from the Oklahoma mining government agency, whatever. I don't know nothing about mining or even the heavy equipment involved. But I had that on my resume. They called me in for an interview. They're like, what does this mean? What do you mean there? I was like, well, basically it means if I don't know something, I'm really good at pretending like I do. They were like, show us, right? So they start asking me questions, and I just like, and I went on through it. They called me back a week later and offered me the job. The only reason I didn't take it is it was a traveling job all through Western Oklahoma. My son was about to be born. I didn't want to get into a traveling job. My car wasn't good enough for a traveling job, right? But I got offered that job. And they were asking for somebody with a master's degree and history in mining. I got chosen over 12 other applicants who interviewed who all had a lifetime career in the mining industry. Don't know why I got offered the job. It still astounds me, right? And there were a couple of other times like that. And so I learned, and that was like avoiding the self-rejection. That's where I learned that it's better to just put your name in anyway. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you don't know. Doesn't matter if you're no good. If they like you as a person, they'll hire you.
You never know unless you put your hand out.
And it was after that that I learned that most employers purposefully put extreme must-haves and job listings. Not because they want someone to have a bachelor or master degree, not because they want someone to have 12 years of experience, but because they're looking for someone who's got the clean version, the guts. They're looking for someone who's got the guts to go, I don't have any of that, but I'm going to apply anyway. And that person usually gets the job. It's nuts how often that happens. And I didn't actually know all that until I became an employer myself, and I joined different self-help groups about, how to get started in employing people, how to do this, how to do that. And it was all stories of that. Everybody's like, oh, you got to have these extreme things because that gets you the gutsy people. The gutsy people will come in and apply for that job then. The ones who really want it. And that's where most employers are looking for. They're not looking for the one with the master's degree and 12 years experience. They're looking for the one who's got the guts and the ability to learn fast and adapt to the situation. Anyway, so that's what I learned. That was when I learned to start avoiding self-rejection, is when I got offered that job. I was like, you know what? I really should stop telling myself that I don't have what it takes to apply for this, because I got offered jobs that I truly should not have been offered. A couple of them during that time.
Well, on that one, because I'm bad about this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how long did it take
No,
you guys to get
not
me out
you.
here on the mats? Or to do the things? But the worst thing that can happen is they can say no.
Yeah.
And if they say no, you're exactly where you are.
You didn't have it in the first place, so you didn't lose anything.
But
Yeah.
honestly, here's my issue. If they say no, it crushes my feelings for like 2 hours or longer sometimes. And I'm like, I'm so terrible.
I mean,
It's hard for me to just roll it off.
Same.
Yeah.
But I just remind myself that, but I'm exactly where I was.
Yeah. You didn't lose anything.
You don't, your feelings are hurt, and you might be sad, and you might cry, and you might, go write it all out and burn it later.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. But you're exactly where you were.
You didn't lose by trying. That's it.
But if they say yes,
Then you've gained a lot. That's a very good point. All right, so the next one I got, this one's a big one for me. This one actually has been helpful for me in overthinking. Silence and time. Silence and time. I've learned over time that I can solve most of my problems with more thinking. But I usually get to the same place faster with less thinking. I know.
An
The overthinker
thinking
overthinks.
things.
They're overthinking.
I know. So the thing is I'll catch myself going, if I haven't found the solution in 3 attempts of ideas in my mind, then if I keep going, I will find the solution. But I'm also going to get very anxious. I'm going to get very depressed along the way, and I will eventually find the solution, but I will also have angered everyone around me. Sorry. I apologize, Miss Rose.
I still love it.
But I've also learned that if I get to 3 ideas and none of them solve the problem, and I can force myself to put it away. Now, here's the thing. If I've been at it for 10 minutes, I cannot force myself to put it away. I'm too locked in. But if I can force myself to put it away at 5 to 7 minutes, 5 to 6, which is hard, but if I can force myself to put it away, 20 minutes later, I will not be thinking about it at all, and the solution I would have eventually gotten to anyway just pops into my head. Weird how it happens.
It's like the word you couldn't remember, the person's name you couldn't remember, or the song lyrics.
So I have found that even if I go ahead and overthink, right? Even if I go ahead and follow the overthinking in through it, the truth is I'm better off not talking about it. I'm better off not rattling it off or going through my mindset. I'm better off going and finding a place to be silent that is silent and just going ahead and letting my brain run through it. Because I will get to the answer faster in silence than I will get there trying to pull someone else along with me by explaining my train of thought as it goes. Because honestly, my brain goes faster than I can keep up, much less faster than I can explain, much less faster than the person I'm explaining it to can process, right? So I'm better off with silence and time. Give me silence and time and I will get the answer. Agree, disagree on that one?
I think that's
I agree with you on your processes.
Mm.
Sometimes it's just easier for you to walk away.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Let me have some silence. I will solve the problem in my own time.
because I'm going to look at you like this several times, and it's just not going to go well.
Because if I try to get help, right, and I try to explain where I'm at, then I have to explain how I got from where I started to where I'm at. And by the time I can say this with you, by the time I can get you on board to where I'm at, I'm extraordinarily frustrated because my brain's already hopped 10 spaces farther, and now I've got to pull you along that far too, but I haven't had a chance to
both
fully
end up irritated.
vet that, and we both end up irritated. Just give me 20 minutes by myself, and I'll explain it when I get the solution. My biggest problem as an overthinker is I become an overtalker. And I start trying to talk it out with the people around me, and that doesn't always work well for me. I end up getting more frustrated at myself, so I'm better off with silence and time. And then once I get a few possible solutions, then I'll go talk about it. All right, now here's where I got to. What do you think, you know?
I think it's all situational too. Sometimes it's better to talk things out with others, and there are other situations where it's just not.
All right. Now the one I can't do to save my life, but I know it's good advice. Just can't do it. Asking yourself questions. When you start criticizing yourself for past mistakes, constantly, or seeing disaster around every corner, constantly, Ask yourself, is there anything I can do right now to change the past or positively influence the future? If the answer is yes, do it. If the answer is no, let it go. You either have to take action,
I love that.
or you have to let it go, because everything else is self-harm.
Yes.
I don't like this.
How many times have
true,
I
though.
described to y'all that I do this?
It's true, though.
Every time, every situation I do this. Can I do anything about it right now?
No.
And I let it go until the next time I
But
can.
see, my problem is, and here's the reason I can't do this. I ask myself, is there anything else I can do about it now? And I go,
I can say
I don't think
about
so,
it.
but I don't know.
Let me think about
Let
it.
me think about it. And then the overthinking begins.
That's where you need silence and time.
And the more impossible the problem seems, the more I dive into it. Like the deeper I go. And I'll have healthy-minded people telling me, that's an impossible problem. It can't be solved. And I'm like, exactly why I'm going to solve it. Give me silence and time.
I apparently should have
Got
bought
the
these
brain
things
over
at
here.
Target. They were like an overthinking list of
Yeah.
like questions to ask you. I should have just bought all 7 of them and passed them out.
You probably
They
should.
were in the dollar section. I should have just done it.
I mean,
Yeah, admittedly, I can't take this advice, but it's good advice.
It is. I
My brain
approach
does
a
not
lot of
compute.
things things on the mat, I can't. I can't not overthink that.
Yep.
How to do a technique or something like that.
Now, that's the part I don't overthink. I'm good at the action in the moment. If I know what action to take, I can shut it off and take the action. It's when I don't know the action that's the problem.
Life scenarios, things that go wrong, or I think they go wrong, I have no problem saying,
Can't do nothing about that.
Me and you are complete opposites in that regard. On the mat, no problems. Off the mat, I'm going to overthink everything.
I just
Yes.
overthink all the things everywhere. There's nowhere that we don't overthink over here.
And it hurts me to say this, but it's true. If you can't take action and you can't let it go, the rest is basically just self-harm. It's getting yourself worked up emotionally and hurting yourself over something that you probably can't do anything about. Though I got to put like 6 hours of overthinking in before I decide if I can't do anything about it, because I am the type that's like, there's always something. There's always something I can do.
maybe
I
you
have
need
to learn that
move
sometimes
your-
you can't.
Maybe you need to move your silence and time forward to cut out some of that overthinking.
Because sometimes you literally have to give it silence and time before you're able to do something about it.
Yeah, I know.
Even
But that
if-
silence and time becomes self-harm. That's the problem.
No, but think of all the hours you're wasting.
Oh yeah, lots of hours wasted. Lots.
Who needs sleep?
But-
Sleep's unnecessary.
But now take that 3/4, 2/3 of the time that at the end of that massive process of self-harm and overthinking, I have an amazing solution that helps the studio, that helps the life, whatever it is. The fact of the matter is 2/3 to 3/4 to 2/3 of the time, I do come up with something like that. And so it makes me go, well, that 2/3 of the time makes the other third that I fail at this worth it.
Okay, so there you go. At what cost?
At what cost? My mental health mostly.
That's okay. He doesn't mind irritating me and sleeping on the couch. He happens to like sleeping on the couch.
I happen to enjoy sleeping on the couch. Because when I get into a rut with my insomnia and I have difficulty sleeping, changing to a more uncomfortable environment will help me sleep better. Because it shocks my brain into a completely different setup. Gee, that Axel's even laughing at me for that. But it's true. So occasionally sleeping on the couch helps.
And he lost it. It was funny.
All right, can we move on to the next one? I'm starting to hurt my own feelings.
Overthinking.
All right, there's only 2 left. There's only two left for you overthinkers out there that are still with us. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, too. You can give me a hard time as well. That's cool. I know I'm guilty of all this stuff, but these are tips that really do help if you can get yourself to do it. Okay. Here's another one I'm not good at. It's about now. Okay? You
Like
cannot...
right now, or
You cannot overthink your way into a better future. You're never going to overthink your way to a better past. All you have is right now, and what you do with now can make right of your past and make good of your future. The problem is, if you spend too much time in that road of overthinking about what to do, then your now becomes miserable. Therein lies the problem. So make peace with yesterday, let go of tomorrow, and worry about now. Try not to get locked into things that are going to make you miserable for 6 hours. Again, not a piece of advice I'm good at taking. Not even a little bit. Nope. I think we've already covered that.
Well, that's why they say the what ifs, should haves, could haves, would haves
Right.
won't get you anywhere.
They won't, though. They won't. So I'm big on the past thing, right? I really don't dwell on the past mistakes much. They pop up in my head from time to time, and I have anxiety attacks about them. But they don't stay with me and bother me that bad past that anxiety attack, that 15 minutes, whatever it is. The past has never been something that I've had a difficult time letting go. My issues all relate to overthinking the future. Me personally. Like, I used to have bad PTSD symptoms related to a lot of things. All that went away after I was hospitalized in ICU, nearly lost my life back in 2010. I lost all my PTSD symptoms after that, didn't I? I mean, it mostly all went away. Something about nearly dying and changing your perspective on life. Ever since then, I've been able to let go of the past better. With the exception... Are you okay? With the exception of the recent past. I have difficulties letting go of yesterday. I have no problem letting go of last week. I can barely remember it anyway. It's yesterday that's my problem. It's 3 hours ago that's my problem. That will bother me. Because recent past, I always feel like there might be something I can still do to make it better. But most of my problems come to overthinking future action. I'll admit that. But yeah, this whole remembering now, even when I'm overthinking, I try to do it. I'm making myself miserable now. I need to go do something else. But my ADHD latches onto it, and I just can't sometimes. Admittedly, I'm bad about taking this advice. But what do y'all think about that?
It's nice advice.
It's pretty sounding.
It's super pretty.
It's probably would really work
If you could actually get yourself to do it. Yeah.
How do you execute that?
I don't know how to execute it.
You
I'm the wrong
execute it
person to
the same
ask.
way you do the tree system from the previous example.
Can you
just
take
have
action
to-
or let it go? Yeah.
It's-
But me, I'm like, if I can't figure out how to take action, I'm going to continue trying to figure out how to take action, and hence the overthinking.
Yeah, because there should always be an action you can take.
Right. That's how I feel.
Yes, there is. There is always an action you can take.
Yeah,
Let
so-
it go.
Now, hang on. Hang on. I got to talk about the positives of overthinking for a second, because nothing is completely bad, right? A lot of people have a psychological tendency to make shortcuts to make decisions, right? This has been well studied in CEOs, for example. If they have a problem and they put that problem to a team and they want these different teams to come up with solutions. Most CEOs will never hear more than 3 solutions, and 80% of the time always go with the first workable one, even if it was not the best solution. Why? Because we have a tendency to want to save time, so we'll tend to just go with the first workable thing that comes along, even if it's not the best thing. This has been commonly studied not just in business owners, but in high school kids, in college kids. It is a common thing that we do psychologically to save ourselves time on making decisions so that we don't have to weigh all of the examples. One positive to overthinking, you never fall victim to that. You never fall victim to decision-making shortcuts. If anything, you're just falling victim to the inability to make a decision, but you are more likely to give each potential solution credit on its merits, and you are, if you're an overthinker, more likely to eventually land on the absolute best solution for the problem. And this has actually been studied as well in overthinking.
Well, that's
So
great
once
if you
you
have.
get there, can you
Let it go?
implement that?
Yeah.
No, I mean, can you implement that action that it took you forever to think of?
Sometimes, not always in the moment. Think about this, right? These. And the thing that went along with that, right? It was actually only 20 minutes of overthinking, but my brain felt like it was like 4 hours. She was putting Axel to bed. I started overthinking a thing, and I couldn't come up with solutions. I don't know if I ever showed you the notebook. It had like 50 ideas all marked out. And then I came up with that. Was it workable in that moment? No, but I started the next day. You know. So, I guess. I mean, sometimes.
Have I done something about this? Yes. Can I let it
So
go
that was an
until
action.
tomorrow?
Yeah, so I took an action, right?
Yeah.
The issue is that I can't stop thinking about it until I take the action.
Yeah.
I'm bad
But I
about that.
think it's different whenever you're presented with potential solutions already
Yeah.
versus if you have to come up with it from scratch and it's like, oh crud, this has to be taken care of now.
You know what else helps, though? When you can't take the action, right? So say you've decided, you've landed on an action, you've overthought it, but you've landed on an action or a couple of possible actions, and you kind of have a direction you want to go. Most of us that overthink will try to move on away from it, but we'll still bounce around the merits of all the different ideas 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 10, 12 more times, just to be sure, because you got to be sure.
Yes. I mean, heaven forbid you not think
Right.
about it.
What helps me is when we're thinking about it, when we're talking about it, we don't see it as being a real thing. We see it as being an intangible thing that is changeable. But when we make the thing physical by taking an action in the real world towards it, we are more likely to go ahead and dedicate ourselves to the action we began to take. So it helps me to stop overthinking it, because I had this thought tonight. I came up with a couple possible solutions, but I can't stop thinking it, and I need to go to bed. What helps is writing it down. I know that sounds simple, but by writing it down, it has become physical. It is on a physical piece of paper. It is no longer an idea floating around. It is now physical. And once it becomes physical, that means you've taken action. Have you went and ordered something or done whatever? No, but you wrote it down. That's an action. In the act of writing it down, you have made the decision to either follow through with that action or maybe write down a couple of actions. So you've made the decision to narrow it down to those two. And you've made the decision to decide on that later. This is why I keep a calendar. So I'll write it on the next day. So then I've made the decision, the action, and I've made it physical by writing it, that I've narrowed it down to these two possibilities, and I'm going to decide on these tomorrow, right? And then I have to force myself to do it. But then it's easier for me to let it go for the rest of the night.
You've eliminated the Zygogenic Effect by creating closure.
Exactly. Eliminated the Zygogenic Effect. That, by the guys, if you've never heard that story of what that effect is, it's quite interesting. Wasn't that the one from the German Beer Fest?
Yes. it
Yes.
was.
Yes. So out of sight, out of mind is kind of the idea of it. The study came when a bunch of social psychologists were sitting around at a beer fest in Germany. I think it was in the 1920s, wasn't it?
Yes.
They noticed that their waiter could remember things extraordinarily well. Remembered what everybody ordered, remembered exactly who went to what, and
I
those
did
of
the
us that have
same
been
thing
career
when I was-
waitresses could
yes.
do it, waiters and whatnot. We understand that. So they wanted to test the guy's memory, and so after he put all the food down and he walked away, they covered it all in napkins. And when he came back, they asked him to repeat to them what their orders were and who had what. He couldn't remember any of it. He couldn't remember the drinks, he couldn't remember the food, or none of that. Because out of sight, out of mind. Once the decision has been made and the physical action has been taken, the brain releases the information that it had been holding on to. Temporary memory storage. This is short-term memory storage, right? Short-term memory goes away once action's been taken. So this helps with overthinking. Writing down the solution or possible solutions can help make it physical and take away the short-term memory issue of holding on to it over and over and over and being afraid of forgetting it. Same way as a waiter or waitress is very, very good at remembering people's drinks and food, but then if you take away the visual of that food, they will no longer remember it after they've given it to you. They'll remember it all the way up to the point they've given it to you. As soon as they've given it to you, they've taken the action, gone. Information is gone. It's no longer necessary information for the survival or the job of the person, and so their brain lets it go.
Closure has been created.
It's known as the Zygogenic Effect. If I'm pronouncing it correctly,
Yes.
I don't know.
You are.
All right. So that was about the power of now. I have two more. Actually, there's a couple more. But when I write notes, man. This one's a big one for me. This one helps me a lot. Fact check your thoughts. I talk about this during Honesty Week. Fact check your own thoughts. Your thoughts will create scenarios. My thoughts. I won't say yours. Mine will do this. My thoughts will create scenarios in my mind that are a reflection of my insecurity, my fear, my doubt, my worries, things like that. So it's important to fact check your own thoughts before you accept them as reality. Because if you're in a highly emotional situation, a highly stressful situation, your thoughts are being driven by your emotions, and they will begin to tell you stories that are not true. You have to fact check yourself. I talk about this during Honesty Week, fact checking my own thoughts. Am I feeling bad or like I'm terrible at this because I'm actually terrible at this, or am I feeling terrible at this because one person who doesn't even know how to do this themselves made a comment about how I look dumb when they don't even know what I was trying to do to start with? So if I start thinking, well, I really do look dumb, I really do stink at this, just because they said that, well, I'm not fact checking my thought. This thought might have been just implanted, incepted into me by someone who just decided that they felt so bad about themselves that they needed to put me down to make themselves better, and I've let them do it because my own insecurities start telling the same story they told me, right?
Sometimes our own opinions of ourselves are not valid.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Kerr. I can talk about that. I need you to run my company.
There's a fee. I'm going to exact a husband borrowing fee.
I enjoy business. I enjoy business, and I enjoy thinking about business. It's my escape, and that's what a lot of people don't understand about me. They're like, you work constantly. Yeah, because it's my escape. I love business. I love the idea. I love the thought process. I love building the systems. Man, do I enjoy the problem solving. Because problem solving allows my overthinking an outlet.
It allows his hamster a free wheel.
Because I'm good at not jumping at the first workable decision. I'm good at finding the best decision, no matter how long it takes me to get there. And I'm good at getting there pretty fast, too. Usually relatively fast, right?
Especially with silence and time.
With silence and time. And fact-checking my own thoughts. Tasha, you want to say anything about fact-checking thoughts?
I'm horrible at it, sir.
I'm pretty bad at it, too. I'm pretty bad at it, too. But I try to ask
I'm over here
myself.
going, don't call on me.
But I try to ask myself, when I'm feeling real negative, having real negative thoughts, I try to ask myself, does this have any grounds in reality? Or am I just saying this because I feel bad? Or am I just saying this because this person made me feel bad?
Sir.
That guy gave me the weird eye, so I must have issues, right? Yeah, I understand.
I can find the reality.
But did we create that reality in our head, or was it the actual reality that happened?
You can't bippity boppity boo your reality.
I do it all the time, man.
You need to stop. You're being ridiculous.
So that was huge for me. Trying to fact check my own thoughts. It doesn't necessarily help my emotions, but at the same time, I'm not neurotypical. I have issues. My brain has issues with chemical dumping and things along those lines. So for me, I can logically fact check my thought and know that I'm on the wrong path, but my emotions the chemical's been dumped. The emotion cannot be taken away now. The emotion is being felt and cannot be stopped. And so that's the issue I have. So this helps me with overthinking, but it does not help me with my emotional response, because that is something I have a legit disorder about. I have a legit disorder with that.
Again, the solution is silence and time.
Silence, time, and doctor. Not a doctor, an actual mental health specialist. I made the mistake of going to too many medical doctors who were like, "Oh, here, try some of this,"
Band-Aid this.
And it took me too long to actually go to an actual mental health specialist who was like, "Oh yeah, you've got great healthy coping skills. Your problem isn't that. Your problem is that you're never going to be able to control your emotions. Your brain does that, and you have no control over that, and you need some help with that." Oh, that makes so much more sense now, because I could tell myself the right perspective, but I couldn't feel it to save my life.
Essentially, what his brain does with emotions is like the bucket at the splash pad. It fills. And then when it gets to the top, it dumps, and then it wobbles back up, and it fills again.
But my brain,
constantly.
But my brain can tell me what the right thing is to think. But once the emotion is felt, too late. Doesn't matter if I have a good perspective mentally. The emotion is going to stay there. The chemical's been dumped. All of it.
Yeah,
not a little bit. All of it.
Your frontal lobe, where logic happens, is a completely different place from your limbic system, where the emotional dump happens.
Absolutely.
So you can't.
So I can logic my way out of it, but I can't stop the emotion from happening.
You can logic your way through it.
Right. But it's not
out.
going to help the emotion stop. I need space and time for that.
Yeah.
That's it. So my bucket fills back up. That sounds terrible.
I have to go do all the things
to
make myself.
I have to do mindless things. I have to go do laundry, clean things, wipe things, lawn work, yard work, picking up sticks, things like that.
Anything that makes you tired.
Yeah, physically tired, right? Work out, lift weights.
Physical activity, all of it. All of it.
All right, now here's another one I have trouble with, but we talk about it a lot. It has to do with Patience Week. Acceptance is peace. And I 100% agree with this statement. I have a difficult time accepting things, and I have a difficult time accepting this, but it's true. No amount of anxiety alone, no amount of the emotion of anxiety is going to change your future. It's hard for me to accept that, but it's true. No amount of regret is ever going to change your past. Also true. Though, a certain amount of regret brought around with the mindset of taking action for it. All right, so remember when I said I started dealing with my PTSD stuff when I went to the hospital? This is how I did it. I got out of the hospital, and I started going back over in my head all the regrets I had. Every last one of them I had up to that point at the age of 24. And I wrote them down, and I took action. I reached out to people. I took whatever tiny action I could to try to, I guess, get to a closure point on anything that I regretted doing, anybody I regretted hurting their feelings, whatever. Anything that popped in my mind. And, tried to rebuild relationships with family, which I realized is not always the best course of action, because sometimes you were right the first time. And
the second time and the third time.
Yeah. I learned eventually. But no amount of regret will change your past unless you put action to it. Peace is found when you can accept imperfection, when you can be fine with your flaws, when you can accept uncertainty. This is a tough one for me. And when you can accept the uncontrollable. If you can learn to accept those three things, imperfection, uncertainty, and uncontrollable, you have beaten overthinking. Now, obviously, some of us in this group, myself, have not mastered patience yet. But it's true. Yeah. No, yeah.
Talk a good game, though, don't they?
I can talk a good game. Doesn't mean I've mastered it. Nana, what are your thoughts on that? Acceptance of imperfection, acceptance of uncertainty, and acceptance of basically patience being the key to being having peace.
That goes hand in hand. It's the very same thing, just said a little bit differently as, can you do anything about it?
You don't have to understand, tolerate, or even forget something that's upset you. You don't have to tolerate it. You take action about it. But if you want peace, you have to accept that it happened. And I've learned this, especially when I talk about if I have to discipline Axel, for example, something along those lines. It's important to remember that I don't have to tolerate the action, but I have to accept that the action happened. I cannot force him to take the action away. The action's done. He can't take it back, and I have to accept that he can't take it back, and I can't make him take it back. All I can do is guide him to not make the mistake again and explain to him why that's important, right? Remember, I've talked about this before. If you force a child into an action or behavior through the threat of punishment, that only works temporarily and while the threat of punishment is still around. But the second the person who issues the punishment is gone, they will go ahead and act. This has been studied since the 1970s by social psychologists. However, if you can convince that child to decide for themselves that it's the right thing to do, then they will fix their behavior and police themselves later. Up to 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks later. They will continue to police themselves if you can convince them that what they did was wrong and this is a better action to take. Then they will make the better action. So the point is in guidance, not threats, right? Though, honestly, by telling them what the worst case scenario that could happen through the negative bad action that they took is the threat, right? By explaining, hey, you do realize that by doing that, you could have got the neighbor boy hurt real bad. What would have happened if this happened? He could have broke his leg, right? Oh, I didn't think of that. Well, don't you think that maybe it's a good decision to watch out for everybody else before you do something crazy like that? Don't you think that might be better, safer for everybody? Yeah. Well, then the idea is to get him to make the decision for himself that, oh, yeah, I don't want to be the kind of guy that gets people hurt because I wasn't paying attention. You know what? I am going to decide to pay more attention before I do certain things so that I can be sure no one around me is going to get hurt. Once they decide for themselves, they will police themselves on the subject from there on out. Parent don't even have to watch.
By giving them an appropriate metaphor to associate with the situation.
Axel polices his friends on things that he's decided about, or good and bad when it comes to lying and things along those lines.
None of them want to have a conversation with us.
Right.
About
I've watched him do it because I'll talk their ear off until they fully regret lying. Man, if I lie again, that guy's going to talk to me for like 3 hours. I don't know if I can handle that. He's going to tell me all the stories about how lying is bad, but by the end of that, they understand the consequences, and they can decide for themselves why lying is bad, why it's not good to, hit someone in the head with a stick, or whatever it might be, why it's not good to try to eat the soap, or make your friend eat the soap just because, whatever. Right? But if you can get them to make the decision for themselves, and that has to do with acceptance, getting them to accept it. Acceptance can help with overthinking. I'm just not good at it. And of course, the final one is one that we talk about a lot. health doesn't start in the body. Health starts in the brain. You can do all the healthy things, but if you walk around overthinking and over anxious and you don't get help, you don't find ways to deal with it, your body's response to that anxiety will make you unhealthy no matter what healthy things that you do. I'm a big case in point on this one. My swings between depression and anxiety over the years would get me to the point that I'll be like, well, I eat healthy and I exercise, but I don't eat enough because I'm anxious or I'm depressed. And so when I eat, my stomach starts hurting and I start feeling bad about myself. So I just don't eat very much. But when I eat healthy, but I'm only eating 1,200 calories and I'm burning 2,000. Making myself sick. It's not being healthy, right? So health starts in the mind. It helps to go to the gym. It helps to eat healthy, stretch, water. Water's a big one.
You are a living plant.
Get enough vitamins. If you don't directly confront the negativity in your thoughts, though, you'll never truly be healthy. So you have to confront, and I did this getting out of the hospital, you have to confront your habit of getting into negative mindsets. And then if you confront it and you try all these tips and you try all these coping skills and you still can't make progress, this is when it's a good idea to seek out a mental health professional who can give you better answers. Because that's what I learned. I went through and studied psychology. I went through and studied all the coping mechanisms. I went through and put them into action. I went through and used them, but I still couldn't. I still had the emotion. I still couldn't deal with it. I just couldn't deal with it. It was too much. When I finally got out and sought a therapist, or a mental health professional, they were like, okay, well, that's because the coping skills aren't your problem. You're doing all the right mental things, and you're doing all the right physical things. The problem is the unconscious part of your brain is doing some stuff that you have no control over, and it's kind of just throwing you off on everything else. But if we can fix that, everything's going to fall into place. And you know what? It kind of has. A little bit. I have days. I still have days.
We all have
We all
days.
have days.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Your turn to talk. I talked too much, gave myself a headache.
Megan, why'd you give him a headache?
For shame.
Jeez.
Apparently,
Probably
I'm just
backflip.
getting chucked under the bus for giving
Yep.
me a
You
headache.
took that's Colin's spot on the bench.
Colin chose not to be in this video. He wanted to run. He would rather run than speak with us about this.
He said he had nothing to say about overthinking.
He did. He said, I have nothing to say about overthinking other than I am a victim of it. That's what he told me, other than I'm a victim of it.
I have no tips.
He just
He's like, I have no tips. And I said, well, I have a few because I'm at least an experienced overthinker. He goes, I'm not that experienced yet. Haven't got any tips yet.
He's still a baby adult.
Yeah. A few more years, he'll get there.
Yeah.
So, closing thoughts on these tips. Tasha, I know me and you, particularly, I know Annie, you do too. We really struggle with this. Megan, I know you do. I know you're keeping your mouth shut, but you overthink a lot too.
I wish I would have known some of these before going to the military because living with that many females at once was
Oh, yeah.
not fun.
Oh yeah,
And
I
you
live.
overthink everything.
I live with one female. That's enough. Thought I was gonna get smacked.
Oh, you will. Just not where no one can see it.
I couldn't resist the opportunity. It was wide open
Right.
shot.
Now
Because the
we're
funny
worried about
thing
when it's gonna
is
happen.
that I might slightly overthink, but I am not the overthinker in this relationship.
To be fair, I was raised by an avid overthinker.
This is true.
I picked it up by,
Association.
association. That's the word. I picked it up by association. So I know. Anyway, what I was going to say is, so I know, talking to us, I know that these tips aren't the easiest ones to do, but have any of you guys found success with any of these tips before? Like, not, I know you haven't found like success, but like felt a little bit better when you managed to use one of them.
I mean, yeah, a couple.
A couple.
A couple. There's the ending of that list. I'm like, no. How do you make that work?
Mm-hmm.
Usually the
Constant
things
practice.
that
I don't even comprehend
aggravate me
it.
the most are things I overthink about. Things, and I have to look at it and say, I have no control over this. So what if this is happening? I can't change it. It's going to happen. We'll just make the best of the outcome and be prepared. That's and really and truly, that's all you can do is just accept that some things are always going to be out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
It's how we react to it
How we react, right?
is what's going to define us. So if we can accept that it's not always going to be the way we want it to be.
Patience with the situation, accepting it for what it is.
The thing is we've all
You gotta
survived.
be louder.
The thing is, we've survived 100% of the things that have happened to us.
So far, though I had a few that were very close.
However, you're still here, which means,
All right.
you know.
So
By all logic.
for my closing statement, I'm going to let y'all in my overthinking level 9,000 here, okay? After I ended up in that hospitalization several years ago, what became the teammate life skills that we talk about week after week, what became the merit badge stuff, my level of overthinking is the level that says there is always a solution. So why did I start? Why did I start studying focus, integrity, discipline? Why did I start that in the first place? I started it because I wanted to fix my own mental health. That's why I started it. It had nothing to do with teaching anybody else. I started it because I wanted to fix my own mental health. So I studied psychology. I studied the word focus. I studied the word discipline. I studied integrity. I studied honesty. I studied studies about all of these things and how they affect human psychology. I spent over a decade now. That's longer than most people go to school to become psychologists, studying this between 2 and 4 hours a day, 3 to 5 days a week. Why? Because I wanted to fix my mental health. And even across all those years, even when things helped but it wasn't getting fixed, do you think my brain ever went, well, this is something you can't control, let it go? Nope. I'm overthinker level 9,000. There is always a solution. It might take me a decade to find it, but there's a solution. So I kept looking. I kept trying. It took my 9th total 2-day meltdown, 9th or 10th total 2-day meltdown, before I decided to go see an actual specialist. And then after I decided, it took me 2 more years to actually do that because I wanted to go through and try all the things I've tried before just one more time to be sure, right? Because I was so terrified of showing up there and being told, well, nothing's wrong with you. You just got problems, son. You know. So I overthought it to that level, right? Only to be told by the mental health professional, well, after that 10 years of trying, you have amazing coping skills, but no matter what coping skills you built, you were never, ever going to be able to fix this issue on your own. And that was like a huge wake-up for me, right? In a way, it was a relief, but in a way, it felt like a failure because I've spent over 10 years with this idea that no matter how long it took before I died, I was going to fix myself. I was going to fix my traumas. I was going to fix everything. You know what? I did fix a lot of things through that time. I got a lot better. But I was never going to get all the way there. So I'm trying to understand that my level of overthinking and believing there's a solution to every problem is good because it allows me to find solutions to problems no one ever thought about finding a solution for. It allows me to get ahead in business. It allows me to get ahead of my peers and several other things, right? It allows me to stay ahead because it allows me to think outside the box. But it also damages me along the way when I'm willing to spend 20 years trying to find a solution to a subject that all I had to do was make one phone call and I could have had my solution. Right? So there's my closing thoughts on overthinking. I've been overthinking for longer than some people have been alive. I done forgot more than some people ever knew.
I just knew you were going to say I've been overthinking longer than some people have been thinking. And that is also true and very hilarious.
Some people just don't think. They just do. Just, all right, do it. Thought, do. Thought, do. No think, do.
That's all 2-year-olds do.
Yeah. No, they're 2-year-olds. I'm talking about most of the adults I know.
I was trying to be nice to the audience. And please, don't overthink this as soon as we get off the video. I need you guys to put emojis and awesome comments and all of those things on this so he doesn't second guess and think that this video is awful.
I'm just going to try my best to forget about it. I'm going to go eat some raspberry puree, sorbetto, and sulk.
Silence and time.
Silence and time. All right, so I can't say it. Ms. Rosemary, say
Until
it.
we see you again,
Be the best teammate you can be. Be the best at being you.